A lot of people talk about transparency.
Yes.
The transparent thing is to vote when people have enough time in the public to see who's going to be the candidates, because people are going to have opinions on them.
Yes.
So that's what I feel we should do, is give the people 2 weeks to see who the leadership of this council is going to be, so we can get word from my constituents about what they want.
Good evening, it's December 15th, and welcome to Cape Media News, your source for hyperlocal news that matters. I'm Mitch Sock. The Barnstable Town Council held nominations this past week for President and Vice President of the Council. Paula Schnepp of Precinct 12 and Felicia Penn of Precinct 13 were nominated for President, while Craig Tomash of Precinct 4 and Gordon Starr of Precinct 1 were nominated for Vice President. With 6 new councilors after last month's election, there was an overview of the rules for nominations and voting practices, as well as a debate on whether or not to suspend standard rules in order to vote immediately. Take a look.
And normally what we do is we hold off until your next meeting, which gives people time to respond to this, the public as well as individually yourselves, and to think it over. And then we will do the elections for the president and vice president, giving time for people to have a say. The reason it's done this way is to give the public the chance to respond, because if they've been listening or if they call and want to know more about the people that are running. That's part of this. It's also the opportunity for all of you to have some conversation individually of what you're looking for your president and for your vice president. But if you want to suspend the rules, you absolutely can do that.
My question is, or my point maybe be, if the whole council is here tonight and there's a chance that and this, it seems to me this vote might be pretty close, and that having the whole council vote on it would be advantageous to all sides when all councilors are here. We don't have a definite whether Councilor Ludke will be here or not. So I think that should be taken into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you.
A lot of people talk about transparency.
Yes.
The transparent thing is to vote when people have enough time in the public to see who's going to be the candidates, because people are going to have opinions on them.
Yes.
So that's what I feel we should do, is give the people 2 weeks to see who the leadership of this council is going to be, so we can get word from my constituents about what they want.
Those in favor of putting aside the rules and voting now, please signify by saying yes and raising your hand and giving me time to write down your names. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, those not in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying yes.
Well, you only need a majority.
There we go. There's my majority. I love it. I didn't need it, but I like it. Thank you.
The Town Council will vote on the President and Vice President positions at their next meeting on December 21st. During the West Dennis Village Stroll this Saturday from noon to 5 p.m., the Congressional Medal of Honor presented to Dennisport native U.S. Navy helmsman Benjamin Franklin Baker will be on display at Holly's Deli. Coxswain Baker served during the Spanish-American War and earned his medal in 1898 when he showed his courage during enemy fire in Cienfuegos, Cuba. Come hear the whole story from Pat Corcoran, overseer of the Dennis Maritime Museum, where the Medal of Honor finds its home from June to September. A Hyannis man allegedly involved in a Thanksgiving Day shooting is being held without bail on 5 gun-related charges. On November 23rd, Mark Griswold placed a 911 call claiming that someone shot at him and his wife at their Hyannis home. The police found the woman with gunshot wounds and immediately transported her to Cape Cod Hospital, where she obtained a protection order from Griswold. Being recently released from state prison after serving 5 years for gun-related charges, Griswold was law enforcement officers' prime suspect in the event. His current charges include gun-armed assault to murder, assault and battery with a gun, carrying a gun without a license, firing a gun within 500 feet of a building, and assault and battery on a family or household member. He is scheduled to appear in Barnstable District Court on January 4th for a probable cause hearing and on January 26th for a probation hearing related to gun possession charges. This Saturday, December 16th, marks the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party. Join the Cape Cod Maritime Museum's History is a Brewin' Party for tea from the Spice and Tea Exchange and snacks while you learn about the history and modern culture of tea. This event will take place from 10 a.m. to noon and is $10 a ticket. Guests can register online at capecodmaritimemuseum.org. The South Dennis Free Public Library will be hosting a Boston Tea Party at 10 a.m. Come enjoy games, crafts, cookies, and tea, and a scavenger hunt to commemorate the day Boston Harbor became a giant teapot. This event is free and no pre-registration is required. In Yarmouth, learn about 2 local captains who participated in the historic protest, sip on herbal tea, and watch historical interpreters tell the tale of Captain Joseph Bassett and Captain Edmund Sears at Gray's Beach. Free to attend, this event begins at 2 p.m. The Cape has seen its first snowfall of the season, which means it's time to begin preparing for winter weather if you haven't already. An important aspect of winter weatherization in the Northeast is to make adjustments to your car and your driving habits. Check to make sure your windshield wipers are adequate, that your tires have enough tread, and that they are at the correct pressure. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation wants to remind drivers to clear snow and ice from the roof of their cars, the hood, lights, windshield, and windows before driving. Habits to be mindful of in snowy and icy conditions are to leave more distance between your vehicle and the vehicle in front of you, to apply the brakes earlier, and not to use cruise control, as the system is designed for dry roads. Mass DOT would also like to remind drivers to be extra cautious on bridges because they freeze much earlier than the roads and can be extra slick. For more information, visit the Travel and Traffic page on mass.gov. Coming up after the break, Osterville Village Dog Parade. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Cape Media News. I'm Mitch Sock. Last weekend, the Osterville Village Library hosted a holiday dog parade. All were welcome to bring their furry friends out for a stroll through the village to spread holiday cheer.
Hi, I'm Cindy Cotton, Executive Director at the Osterville Library, and this is our holiday dog parade that we do every year. The Osterville Library is a dog-friendly library, so we like to have a fun time with the dogs in the neighborhood and walk through the village, and it's totally organized chaos. This is Dewey. He is a teacup poodle, and he is the new library dog named for the Dewey Decimal System. We've been doing it for years. We do 3 a year. We do one at Chocolate Fest, and we do one in the fall. So always look at our website and find when our next dog parade is.
Harwich Golf Committee member Carol Fuller responded to the ongoing conflict between the committee and the Harwich Select Board in a letter addressed to the public. In the letter, she accuses the Select Board members of seeking to disband the Golf Committee through deceptive tactics. She says every action taken by Joe Powers, Jeff Handler, and Michael McCaskill has been designed to make the Golf Committee powerless, prevent the committee and the public from obtaining important information about the golf course, and pass that power and authority to the town administrator. The most important part of this is, in the end, transparency is lost and the public is now removed from their important input and information. Fuller goes on to explain the series of events that have led up to this point from the committee's point of view, detailing the struggle in communication between the Golf Committee and the Select Board. She stresses that each committee member has been dedicated to lending their expertise to serve the residents of Harwich and accuses the Select Board of having unknown ulterior motives in sabotaging the committee. She ends the letter by underscoring her disappointment in the Select Board members and reiterating her confusion as to when and why the relationship with the Select Board became contentious. As it stands, all golf committee meetings remain postponed until June 2024. The Air Force has disciplined 15 National Guard members, including Colonel Sean Riley, following an investigation into massive leaks of classified information online. Airman First Class Jack Teccaria faces charges for sharing hundreds of classified documents on Discord, a popular instant messaging app primarily used by the gaming community. An Inspector General's report reveals a lack of adequate supervision and a culture of complacency within units involved. Tecaria's supervisors were criticized for not restricting access to classified systems and failing to report illegal sharing promptly. Disciplinary actions range from relieving personnel to non-judicial punishment, with Colonel Riley and others relieved of command. The leaks exposed intelligence from NSA, CIA, DIA, and the National Reconnaissance Office. Teccaria allegedly shared a top-secret analysis on Ukraine's counteroffensive against Russia. The report details security incidents and potential insider threats that went unreported. Riley and Teccaria were operating at Otis Air Force Base, which is located at Joint Base Cape Cod. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall emphasized accountability, stating, "When there is a breach of that sacred trust, we will act to hold responsible the individuals accountable." The Air Force plans a department-wide review to address security procedure compliance. Teccaria awaits trial after pleading not guilty to 6 counts of willful retention of defense records. The Air Force Civil Engineering Center on Joint Base Cape Cod hosted a virtual public meeting this past Wednesday to discuss the cleanup of an out-of-use practice shotgun range. Detailing the range's environmental impact and cleanup solutions, the Engineering Center said that while an investigation did not identify any current dire risks to the groundwater from lead munitions, the contaminated soil could lead to further environmental impact. The initial proposal is to excavate the area's tainted soil and bring it to an environmental containment disposal site. Douglas Carson, Civil Engineering Center's community involvement lead, said that about 1.6 acres of land to about 12 inches of depth was tainted with lead from the munitions. If you missed the meeting and have thoughts to share, contact the Civil Engineering Center at 508-968-4678. The public comment period ends on January 8th. 2024. Coming up after the break, Harwich special election. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Cape Media News. I'm Mitch Sock. During last week's Select Board meeting in Harwich, the board postponed a decision on when to hold a special election until they received more information from Town Clerk Emily Mitchell. Despite at first deciding not to pursue a special election following Mary Anderson's recent resignation, the board is now compelled to hold an election to fill the vacant seat due to a citizen petition. However, the petitioner is now looking to withdraw that appeal. Take a look.
So on to more serious business, and that is your issue in old business 8, number A. That is the effort to withdraw the existing petition to hold a special election to fill the vacancy on your board. So I am committed to following through with that. I have a petition to withdraw the petition, okay? And it takes a little bit of explanation. However, I spent 5 hours over the weekend along with Becky with our boards. We have 35 signatures of the existing signers of the original petition to withdraw the petition. So I think I'm for it. The people that sign it are for it. Most people I talk to are for it. How can I proceed? Do I need to get all 242 signatures? Do you need a percentage? Because at this rate, I'll be there for another 35 hours getting signatures to withdraw the petition.
So on that note, we've gotten some updated information that we all need to have some opportunity to read through. Emily has shared with us late this afternoon. So we'll be looking at that information to figure out next steps.
Next step, yeah.
I think that, and any other member can speak to this, but I think that we would not be calling any election prior to April 9th if we do
Correct.
move forward with election.
The petition I'm saying is
I know.
to withdraw the petition
Right.
because it just doesn't make sense.
But we have legal counsel has provided some additional information. It's fairly lengthy, and we all need to read through it.
The long and short of it is there's no definitive mechanism to legally withdraw a properly filed petition for a special election. However, the board might consider not calling one anyways. And again, that's really something that's discussed in depth in the update from council and that I'm happy to get into later during the agenda topic. And if the board were considering that action, evidence that other signers from the original petition felt similarly to what Patrick expressed as lead petitioner, that there's a desire to withdraw the petition, the board might consider that as evidence in your decision-making process. So even if Patrick was able to secure signatures from the 242 original signers, that wouldn't say that the petition could be legally withdrawn, but it could be evidence for the board to consider. So I wouldn't say there's a cutoff number, either for the board's decision-making process and not in terms of the legal framework, but it's just what the board finds persuasive. If you don't mind, I'll just do a kind of brief summary of how we've gotten here. I think things have evolved quickly, so just to keep us and the public on the same page. So obviously we have the select board vacancy created by the resignation of Mary Anderson. The board originally considered under your independent authority whether to call a special election and opted not to. A petition was brought by registered voters of the town of Harwich to compel the board to call a special election. That was properly filed, and our office did complete the certification of signatures. At your meeting last week on December 4th, I was prepared to make a recommendation to you to call that special election on April 9th of 2024, and my recommendation was rooted in the conflicts posed by the presidential primary election on March 5th, and then just the time needed between any two elections for logistical purposes. At your meeting last week, the lead petitioner spoke and made a statement that, I hope you'll forgive me if I misquote you, Patrick, but generally the gist was that in light of the recommended timing, that he wished to withdraw the petition that he had filed under that statute. The board then had a conversation about whether to proceed with the April 9th date that I had recommended, and then also considering, in light of the statement by the lead petitioner, other options for potentially reducing the impact and cost associated with a special election if it was no longer the desire of the registered voters in town who sought it in the first place. So after the meeting last week, I did do some additional research. I spoke again with town council, I spoke with the lead petitioner, and I spoke with the vendor who services our voting equipment. So I do have some updates for you this evening. I'll keep them brief. I know the intention is to bring this back for more in-depth discussion at a future meeting. I shared some information with you this afternoon because I received the opinion from town council only today. It didn't make it into your publicly available materials, but I did share that with the board late afternoon, along with an updated, what I would call summary of scheduling options available to the board right now. Again, assuming that you're looking at potentially scheduling no earlier than April 9th. So the options I laid out for you were, again, to proceed with April 9th. I would say that would be the best option if the board is still hoping to hold a full-scale special election. That's the earliest date that does not conflict with any of the logistics associated with the presidential primary election. And we could have a full-scale, ordinary 13-hour election, which is what a normal election day is for us. The board would have options, even on that April date, to shorten hours, if that was the pleasure of the board, as well as to do things like opting out of vote by mail would also reduce staff time and cost. Last week, the board discussed the May 20th election date. That is the day prior to the annual town election. I think I hope I'm characterizing that conversation correctly, that if the board proceeded with that date, it was in light of comments by the petitioner seeking to withdraw the petition and to minimize the impact. One of the benefits of that date is that it would leave only one time of setting up our polling location, the community center gymnasium. It would be set up by our Department of Public Works one time and be left set up for several days. I would, if the board proceeded with that date, request that you minimize hours to the full extent possible. The logistical question I had to research was whether or not our vote tabulator vendor would have additional memory cards available to rent, so that we could have one set of memory cards programmed for the special election ballot and then our regular memory cards programmed for the annual town election ballot. I was able to speak with the vendor, and they confirmed that they would be able to make memory cards available to us for that election scenario. It does come at a cost, but given that other costs would be offset by the reductions, it would still be a net cost reduction for the election as a whole. And then the other primary consideration for you is based on what town council provided today. I don't want to go into great depth on what that document said. I know I only sent it to you late this afternoon, so not much time to read and digest. But it did include advice that there are relevant legal factors where the board might consider not calling an election, a special election, despite the fact that the petition was properly filed and certified.
No, you've already mentioned it. I just want to be clear about that. We're not considering it anytime before April 9th.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
The board,
We would not be
Is that the
considering it
consensus of the
anytime
board?
sooner, right?
Does it matter to the board for next Monday night if he only gets 100? Should that weigh in on our decision?
I can't think of a particular cutoff number that would be decisive for you. You may choose that there is one amongst yourselves. I imagine the more signatures there are, the more, folks who reach out to the chair or otherwise make known their opinion. It's valuable to have that additional feedback, but I don't think there's a cutoff number where you act one way or the other.
Understood.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be fair to say, if you got everybody, it still wouldn't compel us to ignore it. But secondly, if you can get 42 people, it wouldn't have been a valid petition submission to you because it wouldn't have passed the threshold to do anything.
That is correct.
So we may want to consider, if you can get down below 200, whether that shows that it wouldn't have actually been a real petition at that point.
Yeah, and I think that we'll see when we read through the information that once it's been filed, it is what it is. So back to Emily's original point is that what Patrick's working on would be used as evidence,
Right.
right?
And that would potentially be in our packet for following Monday.
Certainly, we could
Great.
provide that.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you both.
Thank you for joining us this evening. If you have a story you'd like to see covered, send us an email at newstip@capemedia.org. Tune in every week for more hyperlocal news that matters on Channel 26, Apple TV, Roku, and Fire TV. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media, including Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. For Cape Media News, I'm Mitch Sock.